Good morning. It is July 1st at 8:30, and we were at the Economic Development, Historic Preservation, and Environmental Conservation Committee on a wonderful Friday morning. And if we could have the attendance, please.
So we have Dennis Brennan, Kevin Walsh, Clark Henry, Elena Finnan, Jamie Puccioni, Janet Wynn, Clark Henry, Laura Robertson, and Chairman Delarada.
Very good. And are there any comments or concerns from the public?
I did not receive any.
All right. And then that would bring us to the minutes. And I believe we have a copy of the May 6 minutes in our packet. Are there any changes or additions proposed to those minutes?
No, and I move the minutes be adopted, May 6, 2022 minutes.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And those minutes are adopted unanimously. And we also have the June 3rd minutes. Are there any additions or deletions proposed to the June 3rd, 2022 minutes?
No, I have none, and I'll move for adoption for the June 3rd, 2022 meeting minutes.
I will second. Are there any opposed? Seeing none opposed, those minutes will be adopted unanimously as well. And that brings us to the resolutions. Ms. Robertson?
So our first resolution is actually a carryover from last month. When we are working to put together the acceptance of the roads and the utilities for Celts Farm, there's still a couple outstanding items. And actually, when we went and looked at the process for adopting, it really has to be approved by the planning board before the town board accepts the roads. And the planning board scheduling tentative approval for July 11th. So, if we have a special meeting, maybe we could move it forward, but otherwise we would put it at the end of the month.
Okay. That shouldn't hold anything else up, should it, if we do it at the end of the month?
I mean, it's a delay to him by 2 weeks, but I mean, legally, the planning board, I think, has to adopt the subdivision before the town board accepts the road. So it's just a question of, what date it'll end up being, but probably the end of the month, right?
All right.
There's
Very
still a
well.
couple things we have to work through with him too. So it was better to wait. And then the second thing is a resolution accepting a sewer easement for Frangenzo Subdivision. It's kind of a joint thing with Public Works, but part of Frangenzo Subdivision, they're working on trying to get temporary COs because interest rates are crazy. And they had to put extra fill over some of our sewer manholes. And so there was a concern that we needed a wider easement in case we ever had to dig down and repair it. So Lou prepared an easement. It looked okay. I think Matt's looked at it. Essentially, it's just a wider easement covering an easement that we already have over a public sewer, but it's wider because the line is a little bit deeper as a result of the construction. So that would be on for acceptance by the town.
All right.
And the last thing is, last night we called for a public hearing for the special use permit for a daycare and a place of worship at 1850 Union Street. I would recommend also having a tentative resolution for approval on that meeting. We approved a special use permit for a daycare at this exact address, I'm going to say 3 or 4 years ago.
Mhm.
And as it was operating, there were no complaints. It's kind of a plug and play daycare. Unfortunately, the last daycare, I think because of COVID, stopped running, and it has been a full year. So the special use permit expired. So there wasn't any differences, and we essentially vetted it very recently. But the letter of the law says they need a new special use permit, but to the extent that we can help them with their timelines, we usually help daycares.
And that should be able to be done pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, so the planning board's having their public hearing on July 11th with a tentative recommendation to the town board. So you'll have the planning board's recommendation for the public hearing. And then if you guys hold the public hearing and a tentative resolution, it still goes back to planning board for one more meeting,
All right.
at least. So, and 1850 Union, Been there for a long time. It's a nice church. There's plenty of parking, and they have routes for the bus to go through and stuff. And like I said, we never got any complaints once that daycare was up and running before. So, and then the last thing I had was for finance. I think Beth already put this on the finance agenda, but we have our annual SIMS bill. SIMS is our Schenectady Internet Mapping System, and it allows residents and us to access a lot of information that the county puts together. And that's just an annual fee that we have to pay every year, but it's above my signing authority.
All right. And how long have we been doing that?
Well, it's at least since I've been here. I don't know if you and I sort of similar time, but the
Yeah.
other communities in Schenectady County don't necessarily have a GIS system. So I think, at least 7+ years ago,
Yeah, it has.
the county got together and made a countywide GIS system that each municipality pays into. So each municipality pays a piece. But the nice thing about it is it's public. So it serves people working at the municipalities, but it's also really helpful. Like if we get calls from residents and they're like, and we're like, hey, well, try out Sims if you go here. And yeah, it's a really good resource.
Excellent. All right. And that brings us to the Clifton Park Crescent Street area.
So I just put that on as a discussion because, last month we talked about how Knott Street or the Broken Inn was reconfiguring the parking out there a little so that they would have a safe way for people to enjoy ice cream. And he's going to be working on a permanent parking solution. And I haven't had a chance to draw it up, but Chairman Strayer was unable to attend the meeting today because he's traveling for vacation, which kind of a poor time meeting. I didn't realize when I scheduled this meeting, but he had an idea about, we've looked at reconfiguring that intersection before, but there's not a lot of green space there. And so one of his thoughts was to put green space along either side of Clifton Park. But you'd lose about 8 parking spaces. But I know we've talked about this before. If we designated on-street parking on Clifton Park, it's a double benefit because right now those are some of the only affordable apartment units we have in all of town of Niskayuna. And they only have essentially 1 parking space designated to them, and they can't park overnight in the winter. So it becomes really a hardship. I think most families have more than 1 car now. And I can't even imagine how they figure out how to park their car in the wintertime if they have 2. So what he said, because he worked in a place that had some parking, which I really like this idea, is if we striped an on-street parking lane on Crescent Ave, we could have it be people who live on that road or essentially live in the apartments would get a sticker that says that they can park there at any time. And then anybody who doesn't have that sticker, it's just 2-hour parking. So that would help with the problem we had before with the high schoolers parking there too much, because they're obviously going to need to park there for more than 2 hours, and it'll be easy to tell, that a car's been there for the most of the school day. So that would help with that. And then it would also allow additional parking for the stores, but it would be only on the side that has the commercial side of Clifton Park Road. So it would be a designated place for spillover parking that serves both the apartments and the businesses. And
So-
then maybe we could add some green space over there.
Right now, though, if you were to, so we have to give the Broken Inn, maybe 5 feet of space to do, or 6 feet of space for their window?
I think he ended up having more like 12 or 10.
Okay. So then there would have to be a walkway on the other side of that space, right? With some type of curb cut so people could walk in between where the cars are parking and where the barrier is going to be for the ice cream
Well, we've always had the sidewalk on the inside.
on the inside.
Yeah.
Okay. So the 12 feet then would include the sidewalk.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. That
Yeah.
makes sense. And
Yeah.
then there would be a curb cut and then you'd have parking, right?
Right. That is how it's set up.
And the parking would be on street, so it would be parallel to the Broken Inn ice cream, or would that still go in perpendicular?
What Dart Strayer and I were talking about is that it would be parallel, but it would be all down Crescent Street, right? So like in front of the apartment units on Crescent Street.
Okay. So then it would come out to where the last parking spot comes out, which is really a knot, right? Because the parking spots, there's like 3 or 4 that come out, and I think he wanted to broke it in to block a couple parking spots off, right? So people could back up and make that turn. So would the sidewalk would take up that space then, right? And then you'd have the on-street parking? Is
Well,
that the way it would work?
I think that the parking, I'm going to try and bring up a map. Sorry that I didn't put a map in the packet, but I don't think you'd change necessarily so much of the configuration in front of Broken Inn, because you kind of need that ability for cars to kind of like pull up and park very close to the businesses.
Mm-hmm.
But there isn't a lot of like parking for staff or parking for, well, I wouldn't work for staff actually because it would only be 2 hours, but whatever. There isn't a lot of like overflow parking. And I know one of the current concerns we said is if we take parking space away, people are going to potentially start parking on Clifton Park and other places. But if you actually have designated on-street parking in that corridor on the commercial side, then people have spots that they can actually park, and then they're not parking in people's yards, especially if they're striped on the street. But the reason that we haven't done that before is we had a lot of problems with high school kids because, and it could be, this is just me paraphrasing, I don't think that the high school gives away like that many permits to park. And so people who have cars but don't have permits to park, we're finding places to park close to the high school. I know as a problem here, they were parking in our parking lot because it was close enough that they could walk to the high school. So they were parking all down Crescent, and it was problematic for people who live there.
So is there any issue with, it would be town property that would be
It's
used?
town property, yeah.
So the town property would be used for the sidewalk. That would be coming out to 12 feet?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, mostly. A little bit of it is owned by the Broken Inn, but mostly town.
Okay, all right. So we really wouldn't need the county or any other municipality to sign off on that, or authority.
We wouldn't need them to, but I like to coordinate everything with the county, especially because they're spending so much money on that corridor. But yeah,
Okay.
it is all either owned by the Broken Inn or by the town of Niskayuna.
All right. Yeah, it's still a little bit odd the way that layout is there. It definitely needs something. And I don't know, Lang's Pharmacy has a very older, most likely an older customer base. So I think they're kind of concerned about their parking and where their customers would have to walk from.
Yes.
But it looks like if it's on-street parking that goes around there, you're not really going to lose. I don't think you're going to lose.
Well, you wouldn't, yeah. So you wouldn't change any of the parking spaces around the building. It's just talking about like overflow parking.
Mhm.
And then I think it would be nice to designate that overflow parking as on-street parking on the commercial side of Crescent, so that you're directing cars kind of away from parking in front of residential houses. Well, I say commercial. It's residential because, I mean, it's multifamily residential, but it's kind of, what did we call it's mixed use. And remember when we were doing that parking agreement with St. Catherine and Union Street, it's like complementary parking uses or something, right? Because the apartment units are mainly going to need the parking spaces at night when most of the businesses are closed, because they're going to park and go home and rest, most of them. And then they'll be free during the day, mostly. So it's sort of a win-win because the people who actually live there need more parking, and the businesses need more parking. But we didn't designate it before because of the issue with the high school. But I think that that's resolved with Dart's idea, where it's signed as 2-hour parking unless you have, like a little sticker, and the sticker would only go to residents.
How would that be? That's going to be a town expense, right? Sidewalk and parking reconfiguration.
I mean, it's not, well, potentially we could ask Metroplex, but it's not a huge expense to just stripe parking spots and put some signs. I mean, that's only like, I don't know, I'm guessing a couple $100.
I thought we need an elevated sidewalk though with a curb cut. No.
Yeah, I'm not talking about in front of the building.
Oh, okay.
I'm not talking about in front of the building.
Okay.
It doesn't affect Langs. It doesn't affect the Broken. I'm talking about overflow parking on Crescent.
Okay, but then how is there going to be a barrier to stop the cars from going too close to? We're still going to have the same issue, aren't we?
That
there's
is
no curb
something
cut?
that the Broken Inn and the actual businesses still have to work out like how that barrier ends up looking. That's something the planning board's working on.
Yeah, that's the longer term solution that we're working on. Right now, we got the short term, the immediate need, and then the application for a long-term outside seating, which he needs to, give us some more submittals on, what his thoughts are there. We gave him some feedback at the last planning board meeting, but we're still waiting, for him to submit something formally. Because sooner or later, there's going to have to be a public hearing, both at the planning board and town board level. So we need to have the whole picture. Clark and I met with him a couple weeks ago. And one of the things we talked about is that he needs to not only tell us about, the seating, but, what kind of lighting, is there going to be outside music, what hours of operation? We need to have all that information in order to have a good public hearing. So,
Okay, and then that would be an expense borne by the businesses, most likely, or we don't know
it's
yet?
to be determined. It
Okay,
would be nice if the businesses could, but if it's town property, you get into the question, who owns it and who's paying for it,
okay.
Yeah,
All right.
this gets a little confusing because there's a couple different projects that kind of overlap and morph together. Like Kevin said, right now, there's a good plan in place for his temporary outdoor seating. You go to the ice cream window, you get your ice cream, you sit on a bench, enjoy your ice cream. What he would like to do is eventually evolve to having true outdoor dining, which would require more of a redesign of that whole area like you were describing. And there's some caveats about lines of sight to Knott Street that the police have some issues with. So what Laura was proposing, it sounds like with DART, is maybe as you redesign that area around Lang's for potential outdoor dining of the Broken Inn, perhaps allow on-street parking along Crescent, along those multifamily apartment buildings that would be additional parking. Because the challenge is if you go to true outdoor dining, we're already down several parking spots from the Schenectady County project. So everyone's anticipating parking could be a potential issue.
Correct.
So all those projects are kind of morphing together. But Mr. Nietzsche, the owner of the Broken Inn, knows that his next step is kind of work with an engineering firm, come up with a proposal for your potential outdoor dining and additional parking through the multiple ways you can do that.
Got it.
And I think that the town could help if we look at designating parking, on-street parking along. I mean, we allow on-street parking on any of our roads, but in the wintertime, you can't overnight park there.
Mhm.
And that particular corridor of Crescent has restricted parking because of the issues that I was describing with the high school. So it's one of the only corridors in Niskayuna. If you drive down, it says no parking like 8:30 a.m. to 2 p.m., something like
Mhm,
that,
mhm.
school hours. And so that becomes very restrictive because then if anybody's trying to park, if anybody's trying to park and go to the businesses, they're not going to park on the most commercial side of that corridor. They're going to end up parking in front of people's homes
Mhm.
because of the issue with so many high schoolers parking there. But I thought Dart's idea about, which he lived that way for like 2 or 3 years. And he said, anybody who lives it was downtown Annapolis in Maryland, who lived in the apartments above that corridor had a sticker on their car and they could park it for as many hours as they needed. Anybody who didn't have that sticker, the 2-hour parking limit applied. And so the people who lived there always had a space, but businesses also always had customers. So it worked really well, he said. And I had never heard of that idea. And it makes a lot of sense to me. That could solve the high school parking issue, open up those parking spaces. But I think we should stripe them so that they get maximized.
But I guess the plan right now is to keep the temporary solution in place until they can present something with outdoor seating, then that's going to include the raised curb cut and some type of protective device from the outdoor seating and the ice cream window and all
Mhm.
that.
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
And that won't be done this summer, right? I
think
mean,
he's talking about
realistically,
fall.
all right,
Yeah, we're hoping, maybe, later, maybe fall, because there's quite a bit of
Yeah.
work to be done there yet.
sure.
So this gets him through until he closes for the winter, the ice cream window, which could be the end of October-ish, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So hopefully, I talked to Mr. Nicky, and, he expects, hopefully spring it's all resolved and he's able to go forward first thing in the spring.
All right, very well. It seems like they're doing well there. Been there a couple times, and they seem like they're really starting to pick it up. That's great.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right, what's next?
Next is planning board, Kevin.
Yeah, well, we've talked about most of them, but I'll be brief. Since our last meeting of this committee, we had a couple approvals. That's the Mohawk Commons with the splitting of retail space with the Five Below being one of the new tenants there. And of course, the upgrades at Starbucks were approved since our last meeting here. Things we're working on, we've already talked about most of them. Chase Bank will be back, I assume, the end of July is what they're looking for. And that's for the ATM at the ShopRite Plaza. Rivers Ledge is on the agenda for our next meeting. That's the 66-unit senior apartments with also a commercial outbuilding. And we're going to need to make a recommendation at our next meeting for the Zoning Board of Appeals for a 6-foot height variance. And we'll make that recommendation. That was their choice. They didn't want to change the design. So that'll occur at our meeting on July 11th.
That's for the Rivers Ledge
That's for
building?
Rivers Ledge.
All right.
Yep. So it's a 41-foot building with 35-foot is what's allowed. Broken In, we've already talked about, and Celts Farm, we kind of talked about getting close there. We'll have a discussion on Celts Farm on Monday, the 11th, and we'll probably call for a final resolution for, I think, July 25th meeting for Celts Farm. GE Global, they're back with the updates of where they're at. So again, we'll talk about that probably the 11th and call for a resolution for their approval for their new outbuilding on the 25th. And for 18 Union Street, which again, we already talked about, we'll have the public hearing on Monday to July 11th. And we have a tentative resolution that night recommending that the town board grant the special use permit all at the same time to keep that moving forward. The schedule, help them out the best we can. We're waiting on Trinity Baptist Church. I believe they've got their feedback from the Army Corps, and there might be some archaeological dig concerns over there. So they're going to have to do what they need to do to satisfy the state as far as the archaeological. I believe that's the state, right?
Mm-hmm.
And no new projects have been submitted, and our next meeting is July 11th, as I stated.
All right, a lot going on, as usual. And that brings us to the grants update.
Yeah, just quickly, the zoning board has 4 cases, and then the grants update, I was able to reach out to one of our engineers, and we are going to combine the Upper Union Street with the critical bike path pedestrian grant. And then when I was talking to him, I was like, well, we also want to do the plum sidewalks. And he was like, yeah, we should put them all together. So he's working on putting the Plum Street in those bid documents too. Might make things a little complicated for Janet because multiple sources of funding, but if we can do cost savings on the bidding, because the costs right now are just crazy, he said putting them all together in one thing will definitely be cost savings to the town. So we're working on a combined bid document for all 3 of those projects to come out as soon as possible. For complete streets, I thought we had a really robust discussion with the police chief and with the supervisor and a couple of concerned residents. The complete streets, they like to do demonstration projects just to get different types of complete streets treatments or traffic calming treatments out into the world. They were thinking about doing a bike lane on Lexington, but if there's a lot of interest in creating a mini roundabout in Old Niskayuna, it's also something that they are very supportive of to try. So we're looking at potentially shifting gears and doing a mini roundabout demonstration project if possible. We also had a really good discussion about the Safe Streets for All grant. We left with a bunch of tasks. I did follow up with CDTC. I have some information on the Safe Streets for All grant, but that's it's a federal grant that's literally pumping like almost $1 million, I think, into safe streets and complete streets. So all that stuff is good. We're still working on our priority letters for 2022 and the Winnie easement, but I left them on so that, if you guys had any questions on them.
All right.
And Tree Council had a very successful spring photo contest. The winners came and picked up their prizes within a couple hours of being notified. So that worked pretty good. I know the supervisor liked a couple of the pictures. They were very pretty. And a lot of talk about the spongy moth. There's a lot of deforestation, I think on Rose Hill maybe, and Orchard Park is pretty bad. If you drive up Blue Barns Road just nearby, almost complete defoliation. So our DEC region for Forester, Scott Moxham, came to town hall and did a presentation for everybody. The supervisor announced it last night too, but it's recorded. So if you're getting questions on spongy moth, it's very comprehensive, and you can just direct people to our YouTube channel. It's already got over 100 views.
Mhm. Wow.
So it's pretty cool.
Is that on our town website?
Yeah, I mean, I want to create a better link to it from our tree council website. If you go to the town website and you just click town videos and then you click YouTube channel, it's still very close to the top. You can
Alright.
just sort through the videos and find the Forester. But at some point, I want to do a nicer button for people, especially because most of the caterpillars are done now. It's getting very close to them being over. So, memory of them might start to fade, but we want to like ping them in the fall and be like, go find the eggs and scrape them off. Here's a link to the video. So I want to make the video link a little bit
Mhm.
better, but you can definitely find it on the town YouTube channel too. And he did a great job. And he did it on very short notice. And Susan Polsinelli helped me with that. So that was very nice of her too. And then we're still working on the ShopRite Plaza trees, but I think we've got pretty good plans for most areas now to have the dead trees taken down and replanted. So hopefully that'll help ShopRite just get a little spruced up and look nicer so that there aren't dead trees when you're driving down in the heart of the town of Niskayuna. That's the things that the tree council's really focused on right now. CAC, the Lomo initiative, as reported by I think it was Bill, maybe, has been going well. There's a lot of birds that are using the Lomo areas, and I think we just still need to put signs up over on the River Hillside. The NRI, we've had a couple drafts that have been submitted by our contractor. I know Clark had a chance to read through them and had some comments. Very thorough, and I appreciated that. So we should have potentially a draft plan maybe for the next meeting that we could have the town board adopt, but we still have to finalize some of the work that they did out there. And then pesticide-free outreach is still ongoing. Climate Smart Communities Task Force submitted some stuff for the Climate Smart grant, just waiting for DEC on that. Had town board accepted the compost bin day grant for $5,000 last night at the town board meeting, so that's exciting. So the next steps, I think, are probably to schedule a date and order those compost bins and then start trying to get master composters to come here, which there are such things, and they're cool. And then I don't want to jinx us, but we launched the Solarize Niskayuna campaign. We needed 10 people, residents of Niskayuna, to sign up in order to reach the NYSERDA incentive of $5,000. We had the Solarize campaign out for 3 days, and we've already reached
Great.
and some communities have had it out for 3 months.
Mm.
So hooray for Niskayunaites. I still have to submit their names and the completion document to get the $5,000, and I guess it's very close. There's only 1 or 2 grants left, so that's going to be the number one thing that I'm going to do today. But I think that's amazing.
So we've already got enough signed up to
For
get
the
the grant?
5,000. I
Excellent.
will still do, I was thinking about next week, a meeting for people to come and talk to the Solarize, the community solar providers, because a lot of people have questions. I did get a lot of emails. Hopefully I was responding to people quickly enough. There's a really good FAQ on the Nelnet website that I've been sending people. But I did hear this a couple of times that people feel like it's kind of too good to be true. I kind of feel that way as well. But it's NYSERDA accepted. It's been running for a year. There's a lot of people in Albany. It's called Solarize Niskayuna, but really it's the Solarize Albany incentive that the Niskayuna people are able to take advantage of. And I haven't heard anything bad about it. So I think it actually just is really good. So I'm going to do it myself at some point if I have enough time to sit in front of the computer for 20 minutes. So I was very excited about that. I'll let you guys know if we get the 5,000, and then we have to come up with another kind of a compost bin day or something else we can do for our residents with it. That's cool.
Excellent.
So I'm going to turn it over to Clark and bring up some slides.
Okay, we wanted to give a quick update on the Architectural Review Board. The last meeting was held on June 15th. There are 6 projects that I would say are kind of on the back burner. The applicant still has to get some materials together to present to the ARB. So they're kind of moving at the applicant's pace. There are three main active projects that we discussed on the 15th: Celts Farm, the Rivers Ledge Senior Center, and the Broken In outdoor seating. The ARB is providing their comments to just help with that project as well. And there were two ZBA cases for garage additions or new garages. So our next meeting is on July 20th. So we're down to 5 projects on the back burner. One has come forward with new information, and there are 6 active projects. So one of them is the Glen Eddy, which Laura is displaying here in the upper left. That's the existing kind of main entrance drop-off pickup area. You can see it's a little bit of a covered walkway. They're applying for a new certification that requires them to enlarge their dining room for more wheelchair accessibility, things like that. So in the process of doing that, they're enlarging the dining room and the library, and they're redesigning that front drop-off pickup area. You can see in the lower right, there's more of a covered entrance that cantilevers out over enough to completely cover a passenger getting out of a car from the elements. So they'll be protected. So they're on the agenda for the July 20th meeting for the ARB to take a look at this. The planning board has already reviewed it and approved it, and asked the ARB to take a look. So it's a nice addition to their facility. Rivers Ledge, we've mentioned the senior center. They are pursuing that 6-foot area variance for an increased height because they think that extra height gives them a more residential roof line with a pitched roof. So they're very committed from a design standpoint to that look. So they want to bring that before the ZBA. Another project is Celts Farm, and we showed this at the last meeting, but we wanted to just reinforce, I believe the green areas there that you see shaded, those are single-family home locations. The average density development project requires a certain percentage of single-family homes with the townhomes. So we looked at designs there's kind of a higher-end single-family home on the upper left, and then on the lower right was a more of a ranch-style single-family home that the developer had originally shown the planning board and the ARB had looked at a little bit. And you can see that's a really nice version of a ranch-style single-family home. If you go to the next slide, Laura, with some of the proposals that were put forth, there are different slight design tweaks to that single-family ranch-style home. And the ARB was not as thrilled with some of these versions relative to the design of the townhomes and the larger single-family home. So knowing that you can't really control what percentage of those single-family homes could end up being the smaller ranch style, they're coming back to the developer on the 20th, and the developer is very interested in their feedback, but they're going to provide some design options on how to kind of spruce up and enhance these designs to make them blend a little more at the scale and the level of finish that the townhomes and the larger single-family homes have. So that's a really good application of the town's ARB to interject some good, positive, inexpensive ways to kind of enhance the design. That's exactly what we want them to do. So this will be a great project. And then the GE, there's an example. We don't have a color version yet, but that's the townhome version. And you can see there's some finished or some exposed lumber, or exposed beam type design in the facade there. So I think that's going to be a very nice building. So we're trying to just bring those ranch style homes up to that level of finish. The GE Global Research Building will be coming back to the planning board. They've done some site engineering drawings. So the ARB is taking a final look at that building. And then we also have a proposed addition at 1747 Union Street, just a basic addition to that property. And then Laura received a project for the Lions Park train station renovation, and Dennis too, probably. You guys are a little closer to that, but I think that's something we'll run by the ARB for their input as well.
Mhm.
So, and then there are 4 ZBA cases, as Laura mentioned earlier. I haven't looked at them yet, but we'll take a look at those, and it is in the resolution for the formation of the ARB to have them look at all ZBA cases. So we'll take a look at those and see if there's an opportunity for the ARB to minimize the impact of any variance.
So it seems like with a lot of the newer developments, especially with the aging in place, you're getting a lot of big garages on the front of the home. And it's like, welcome to my garage as opposed to welcome to my front door. And I get the convenience of it and everything, but that really takes the look and the architectural style back a good way. So yeah, that's key for the ARB to be working on that.
It is. I know the developers have said there's a real movement away from the garden style multifamily homes to a little more of a luxury apartment
Mhm.
with covered parking and a garage and things like that. Exactly.
Excellent.
Yeah. I can't remember where I read it, but I remember it was a joke, but somebody was saying that if aliens were studying our planets, they would think that we were subservient to cars, not the other way around. Because we got to make sure our garage is big enough for all our cars.
That's a good point.
He does have some side load garage variants. The house that he's building now is going to be a side load over there, so.
Yeah. Just sometimes a little bit sad how much we structure our world for our cars. But that's off topic. So the building department and planning really has an intern that we had last year. He's very good. He's started scanning our permits, which is very good for our electronic data retrieval system. And he's also helping organize permits and drawings. So that's helpful because it's still very, very busy up in the building department. The planning department, I know I really wanted to have this step done before the meeting, but I did not. But I think the next step is to get the design on the Council Road sidewalk. That's what we talked about at the last meeting. But we've been very busy. Celts Farm and Vincenzo Subdivision and 2340 Knott Street are all pretty big projects. They're in a complicated place. And so we have to put a lot of information together and make sure that they have all of their information to us, send them a lot of lists and things to make sure that they're covering everything before they get kind of like released into the world. And that takes a lot of time. So planning department's been pretty busy with Celts and Vincenzo and Knott Street. But hopefully those will be closing soon. Elena, do you have anything? Wait, they won't be able to hear you. Hold on.
So not too much to add. I'm working with Laura's department on the developments, Vincenzo, Knott's East, and Celts Farms to try to get all of the easements and road acceptance, utility acceptance, and all that done. So we should have a lot of that on probably for this month. We might try to do some in the special meeting and then some at the end of the month. It just depends on when we get what we need from the developers. And in addition to that, we have 2 code cases going to trial. One was supposed to be last night, but it got moved to next month. So I have 2 trials on July 28th, I believe it is. And we have a couple of Article 78s pending. Those are just going through the process. I think that's it.
She says that lightly, but it's a lot of work. And we thank Elena very much for all the help that she gives us. Okay, and then the last thing, I can turn it over to Dennis, but I included in the packet, Dennis, I met with the architect. I mean, I think of the actual building that we're sitting in, right? Or he had something to do with it. And he submitted a proposal to work with us on restoring the train station. So I'm very in support of it. It does look like it may need a little budget, but I'll let Dennis talk about it too if he wants to. Do you want to talk about it?
Well, Jim is a retired architect, retained his license, he had all his equipment, and he volunteered his services to renovate the train station. He's actually already begun. I think he's been down there, take some measurements and whatnot. He's also volunteered to work on the school, or the Grange, whichever you want to call it, and to be a member of the Preservation Commission. So I think he'd be an excellent addition. And yeah, obviously there's going to be some expense involved in, not for him, but for the survey, planning, examining the structure, and deciding what may or may not need to be done in order to preserve it. He outlined some of the costs. So we're talking a few $1,000s to say at least maybe five tops for moving along. And hopefully we'll be able to find the funding for that somewhere.
Yeah, and so I think it's really good. Jim has been really upfront about what the costs are. He's able to volunteer his service, and I mean, he's literally volunteering like thousands of dollars worth of services, but he's not able to take on himself, like you have to get masonry, brick tests and stuff like that in order to properly document like what types of materials would be used to rehab the building. But I think that for the small investment plus the volunteer time, he's already identified grants, and we met with Jeremy, of Barton LaJudas, and what you hear over and over again when you're looking at these things is you need these shovel-ready projects. So what Jim can do is create a full assessment. He needs a little bit to be able to get samples so that he can truly say it's going to be this that has to be done. But I think what he's talking about doing on his own volunteer time is literally like a shovel-ready project, and he's even identified grant funds that he has used before. I think when Dennis and I were meeting with him, he mentioned that he had rehabbed Emily Dickinson's house, my personal favorite poet ever. So that was very exciting. He's got experience documenting the houses, and he has a lot of passion on once they're documented and we know exactly what needs to be done. There's a lot of, but this is the first step that you need, but then there's a lot of rehab funding out there. And I think that where the town has missed out on submitting historical grants is because we don't have the true documentation that's required in order to be ready. And so I just think it's amazing that somebody would be willing to donate that to us, except the masonry samples could be $750 each. He needs somebody to help him with the roof evaluation, so he has to pay them. That's like $1,000. And then printing, he needs about $1,000 to print all those big plans. So I will look in my budget, but what I was thinking is that probably if the town board likes it and is happy with it, we could do a resolution accepting his work and then just making a budget for whatever incidentals are needed in order to document the building.
Mr. McKinney's a past planning board member also. I don't know if you know that or
Oh,
not.
he is?
Yeah.
He's worked on many different preservation projects in his career. He knows how to access the grants, state, federal grants that are available. But the first thing you need to have that plan in place, a detailed plan in place that makes it easier to access some of those funds. He's worked out in Amsterdam, I think he was talking about, and with Paul Tonko getting funding for a historical project. So I think it's an excellent start, an excellent possibility for us.
While we're on the topic, I did apply for some grant funding through Assemblymember Steck's office to make repairs to the deck. So we should definitely continue to coordinate because I want to make sure if the deck work is done, it's aligned with any future any future updates that could be done to make sure it's all aligned.
Yeah, you had told me that, and I told him that you had that, so he is aware that we do have, hopefully, money coming for the outside, because that's kind of an immediate safety access concern that needs to be done. But he can definitely help make sure that that's done right, and then document all the other stuff too.
Excellent. I'm very confident that the funding will be coming through and we'll be able to make those construction updates to the deck and make it safe. And it's really important because that is now a new birding location for the New York State Birding Trail. It's an extremely popular park in town. So we want to make sure it continues to be the gem that it is.
Really nice.
Yeah, and we definitely want to make sure we support Jim McKinney in any way possible because we don't want to lose his volunteer work and all the knowledge he's willing to put into this. So anything that the town board can do to facilitate that, I'm sure we'll do.
Okay, I didn't have that for a resolution, but it probably should be. So can we add that on the fly? Yes, but and Dennis can bring this up. He sent me a sample historic preservation committee email blast. We just have to get that out there so that hopefully we have more than a couple. That at least we have a couple more names. Okay, so yes, so two, this, and then potentially historic preservation committee people.
I do have one other person who's volunteered to be on the Preservation Commission. So we're down up to two.
Yay! Okay, well, two is better than none.
Yes.
So we'll add McKinney donation and budget, and then the historic preservation committee. Thank you, clerk. Okay.
And then the only other thing I have, we skipped over the Winnie easement. Is that,
I'm I talked about it very quickly. We're still working on it. Yeah.
what remains to be done?
Actually, the Winnie easement is not the same as the Rosendale easement. The Winnie easement is a complete streets connection at the end of Winnie Road to what's the name of that road? It's
Oh,
like
okay.
Merlin
Yeah,
or something.
okay.
But the one is the Winnie House one that you're talking about, right? I actually didn't have that on the agenda, but that's the same. I did a preliminary research on it, and I can see that I can see that there is land on the other side of the bike path that's owned by the Winnie House people,
The Stringers, yeah.
but it doesn't, like, the preliminary research that I did not show them as the owners of the underlying owners of the bike path. So what I wanted to do is actually, like, and it takes me a while, I have to like go into the deed and look at the meets and bounds descriptions and then draw it, because my initial research was that they definitely have ownership on either side of that train track, but it didn't look like they had an easement across it and they were the underlying landowners. But that was just my preliminary research.
Okay, but it's in the process.
Yeah.
In process.
And I never want to take anything away from people. So the next thing is really to just sit down there and do meets and bounds, but it's a time consuming process, which I will do so that we can get that sign up, because that sign's beautiful. And then we had talked about getting another one of those signs, right? For, what did we talk about that?
For the railroad.
Oh yeah, for the
Railroad
railroad.
station,
Yeah.
We can get it. That should be easy to do. I mean, it's on the National Registry, so that's all you need to be eligible for a grant for one of those signs.
We don't have a historic sign out there right now. Yeah, we should definitely. So then we'd have two. That'd be kind of cool. You'd be going along the bike path, then you'd have one for the Winnie House on the one side, and then you'd have the other one for the Lions train station on the other side.
And we still have the one for the school.
And we still have one for the school that we have to put up. I think that's a good idea.
All right, is there anything further for the good of the order? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Are there any opposed? And we are adjourned to the first Friday of August. Boy, the summer's really moving along.
Do you want to see the list?